Chapter 8, Full Court Press. I walked back in. Do you want me to go get ice, or... Only silence from the other side of the room. I'll go get ice. But it wasn't that easy. I searched all 23 floors of the hotel without finding a single ice machine. Then I went to the lobby to inquire. The language barrier created a few problems. 先生，我不知道你说的是哪一个图书馆. And I was no closer to my goal. Next, I broke into the hotel kitchen, found a freezer, and, with a large cleaver, shaved off the frosted buildup. But my meager yield melted on the elevator ride up to the room. Determined, I put my detective skills to good use. I searched online expat forums for keywords like cold and refreshing. I perused bilingual dictionaries for the phrase cube object made of snow. I asked an elderly English couple in the elevator. Problem was, they only spoke German. I was at my wit's end. But like an obese mother of 6 too fatigued to cook dinner after a long day of work, I arrived at the obvious answer. McDonald's. I walked back outside onto Zhongshan Road. I turned right and came to a 7-way intersection. It was 2 a.m., peak party hour. The bass pulsing from the nightclubs shook the air along the sidewalk. The lines to get in had mostly dissipated. I thought about getting ice inside, but decided against fighting through the crowd of drunks and club rats. I turned the corner and shortly reached another 7-way intersection. I turned it down the road bearing 37 degrees east-northeast. The evening was quite pleasant, actually. Finally a chance to see Wuhan at its most vibrant. I let the sights and sounds wash over me. Sleek sports cars, neon lights, a 24/7 Walmart. I had already passed a few McDonald's on my 10-minute walk, but knowing Fran needed some time alone, I decided to wait for one broadcasting a basketball game to help take my mind off things. In many ways, basketball was my church, an arena of solace and quiet reflection in moments of personal despair. Despite the painful memories it invoked, I remained the ever-faithful parishioner. Gatorade was my holy water, bleachers my pews. Being sexually molested by my coach was my being sexually molested by a priest. Up ahead, a pair of courtesans in low-cut cocktail dresses stalked the sidewalks, enticing weak-willed foreigners by flashing their pussies. Carter would be in heaven, I thought. Prostitution is just the rich man's masturbation, was a personal motto of his. I ignored them, not blind to their appeal, but my attention instead with the big screen a few doors down playing the Bucks Timberwolves game, which I later realized was actually the Chinese Basketball League's Changsha Brucks versus the Shenyang Kimberwolves, another ingenious example of Chinese cultural appropriation. I had found my McDonald's, even though I didn't see any golden arches and this one seemed to serve mostly cocktails. But there were burgers and fries, so it had to be Mackie D's. I took a seat on the small outdoor patio. I ordered a Big Mac, which, in China, is actually a chicken sandwich. I tuned into the game. Chinese basketball had its own local flavor. It was more fast-paced than its NBA equivalent. Full court presses and fast break points were the name of the game. Also, jump balls were decided by a game of tic-tac-toe. The Shenyang squad led by a considerable margin, stretching their lead to 49 by the end of the third quarter, though it did seem unfair they were allowed to have 8 players on the court. My burger and mojito arrived. I was hungrier than I realized, not having eaten since the sushi bar at the Columbus airport, which was almost a day ago, and with the time difference was now actually 2 weeks in the past. ALB Air, unfortunately, only served whipped cream, strawberries, bananas, cucumbers, eggplants, and the fish taco platter wasn't available this time of the month. I ordered another burger. My thoughts returned to Fran and the case. I had my suspicions Michael knew about her daughter. I hoped we'd find Johan's second wife before the Chinese police did. I phoned back home and had the boys at the office run some background checks. I'd also tried Carter, but Thailand was keeping him busy. In the corner of my eye, I caught another man sitting down at the table adjacent. He was foreign, with jet black hair, dark piercing eyes, and an unkempt beard. He also had several gold teeth, large scars streaking down the right side of his face, an eye patch over his left eye, and raw, bloody knuckles. Something about him struck me as off. He suddenly stood up, walked over to my table, and sat down across from me. "Can I help you?" I said. "I'd like you to look under the table." "Okay, but I don't see." And then I saw it. Several of my fries had spilled onto the floor. Unaware of the cultural faux pas of which I was clearly guilty, I quickly picked up the fries and shoved them into my mouth. Perhaps it was a sin to waste food here. Sorry about that. No, not that. Take another look. I looked again, and realized what he was talking about. I saw my passport, wallet, phone, hotel keycard, watch, and one of my socks loose on the floor. I pieced together what had happened. A few minutes earlier, I'd gotten excited by a missed 3-second call in the game and quickly sprung onto my seat to yell at the TV. My sudden movement must have jostled everything out of my pockets. Oh, thank you, kind sir. I don't know what I would have done without this stuff. No, that's not what... Hold on, let me just shove this back into my pockets. I know they recommend you get one of those fanny packs when you travel, but I think they make you look kind of gay. I have a gun. Are you sure? What kind of question is that? I'm pointing it right at you. I looked over at the man's legs underneath the table. I don't see anything. Quit stalling. No, seriously. Wait, what color is the gun? What do you mean, what color? It's black. Well, there's your problem. What? Well, you're wearing black, plus it's nighttime. A white gun would have been a better option. Are you ready to listen to what I have to say? I laid my hands flat on the table and tried to stay calm. My eyes met his. I checked my surroundings. The score of the game was 169-93. The Kimbrough Wolves were bringing the ball up the court. I locked in on the sound of the dribbling basketball to gain focus. Tap, tap, tap. My photographic memory and lightning reflexes only worked if I could find some way to link them with basketball. Tap, tap, tap. I noticed another man standing on the sidewalk outside the patio. He was muscular, decked out in blue short shorts, a hot pink polo shirt, and roller skates. I made sure to keep my eye on him. Do you see the green van parked across the street? I did. My second encounter with a windowless van in less than 12 hours. 2 men in ski masks stood at the rear sipping Starbucks. Had they spotted me on my way here? What do you want? If it's money you're after, I've only got credit cards. The extra $2,000 I keep tucked away in my socks for situations like this must have blown away when I was arguing calls. If you want to live, do what I say. You're going to get up from your chair and walk towards the van. I want you to get in the back and... He blinked, and that was when I smashed his face down onto the table. He didn't realize I was biding time, waiting for my window of opportunity. The moment he blinked, I knew it was my chance. I used the narrow window of him blinking and the ski mask kidnappers tying their shoes to get a drop on him. In one quick burst, I stood up, reached across the table, grabbed his beard, and pulled his face into the table's edge. The weight of his head flipped the table over. He crashed to the floor, the table landing on top of him. I knew from experience that more than 90% of all kidnappings start within the first couple minutes of the total kidnapping time. If I'd gotten in that van, I might have never seen the light of day again. I jumped back on the end of the overturned table, pinning the still conscious gunman to the ground. I looked for the gun, unsure whether or not there ever was one. The masked men across the street had heard the commotion and came running. I yanked the gunman's hands out from the table. Both were empty. The customers inside scattered, screaming as they ran out the back. 我不能死，还有那么多电视剧没看完. The assailants started spraying bullets into the restaurant. I rolled out of the patio and into the indoor dining area of the McDonald's, ducking behind Grimace, which in China is actually a purple jukebox. These guys had a lot of balls shooting at civilians out in the open like this. Luckily, they made the classic mistake of being terrible shots. The gunman had now reached the patio. I saw my chance. The original gunman's pistol sat on the floor a few tables over from my current position. It must have flown from Eye Patch's hands when I hit him. The barrage of bullets from outside continued. The bar and dining area had mostly cleared, save for one table of elderly people deeply engaged in a game of mahjong. I knew I had to get to that gun. The basketball game was still running on one of the big screens inside. I honed in on the sound of the ball. Tap, tap, tap. I took a few deep breaths. Tap, tap, tap. And then I dove. I did 2 somersaults and snagged the weapon in one swift motion. I cocked the gun, aimed it outside, and returned fire. My first shot was a direct hit. The suspicious man with the short shorts I'd seen earlier. Only problem was he was already halfway down the street fleeing the scene when I clipped him in the spine. I took cover behind another table as the gunman returned fire. I could see now there were 4 altogether. 2 shot at me while the other 2 helped up Eye Patch. I tried to think what my next move should be. Some sort of homemade grenade? Don't be ridiculous, I thought to myself. That's probably way over on the other side of the bar. The gunmen had recovered their compatriot and started retreating to their van. I knew I had to make these last few shots count. I fired one off. Hit. But I only got Eye Patch's right foot. Another shot. Hit. But that only struck his left foot. The gunman got in the van. I ran back out onto the patio, looking for any cover I could find. I warned nearby pedestrians about these terrorists. Worried about the potential language barrier, I kept it simple. Van dead bad. Van dead bad. Gun kill. Van dead bad. The van took off. I decided to risk it and ran in pursuit. It was headed in the direction I'd come from, perhaps towards the Starbucks they'd spotted me from. But which one was it? I ran along the sidewalk, using the trees as cover. They stopped at the first 7-way intersection. No police sirens as of yet. I stopped near the corner to catch my breath and crouched down low. The light turned green. The van screeched off. But it still had to wait for 2 more lights to fully clear the entire intersection. I risked exposing myself. I yelled out to people as I approached the left side of the van from the rear, just staying a little behind the driver's window. Another blast of gunfire. But that was on the other side of town in an unrelated incident. We just happened to hear the distant echo. It was 4 a.m. and the last of the club traffic poured out onto the streets. I called out to the crowds. "Bullets from van can fly!" Nobody seemed to react much. The van got the final green. It took off down the road, much faster than a person can run, I soon learned. I contemplated shooting out the tires, but I couldn't risk any more civilian casualties. There were probably 13 or 14 dead and seriously wounded people back at that McDonald's. The van increased the gap, and I pumped my legs harder. Finally, I heard police sirens. Then I realized how deranged I must have looked. A 6'10" white man with a blood-soaked suit and a handgun barreling down a street, screaming. Should I toss the gun? Not a good idea. Some stray dog could find it. And I figured if I just explained myself to the police, they'd understand. I saw headlights coming toward me and slowed down. But I soon realized this wasn't a police car. It was the van coming back at me. There were maybe 100 feet separating us. I booked it toward the opposite side of the sidewalk, ducking behind a roadside sign for massage services. More shots came at me as I dove. I felt one whiz past my ear. Another one almost nicked my iliopsoas. I squared my shoulders and pulled the trigger. But I was out of bullets. As the van sped off one last time, I noticed the back doors were now open, flapping wildly. I looked in. I couldn't be certain, but I saw something I wish I hadn't. Eye Patch was lying down in the back, and sitting at his side I saw a young girl, olive-skinned and red-haired.